guys stand with me? I'm going to read the verse for today, just as a way to honor God's word, and then Pastor Matt's going to take back over. But today we're going to be in Joshua 1:9. It says this: "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." Thank you. You may be seated.
So I don't know if you can believe this or not, but I've never been a cyclist. But I've heard stories about what it's like when the wind comes at your back and your riding partner in front aligned perfectly, putting you in that space where things become effortless. I've never been an avid runner, but hold back your laughter, jerks. I've never been an avid runner, but I've heard stories about that thing called the runner's high that comes on the other side of the burn of the lactic acid and the voices in your head that tell you to stop. I've never been sailing, but I've heard stories about what it's like to catch the wind and the current just right so that it feels like you're moving through another dimension with minimal effort. Cyclist, sailor, runner, mom, dad, human, follower of Jesus, skeptic, aching, hurting individual, whoever you are that defines how you identify this morning, there is always something, internal and external, that drives your movement forward and determines your direction. There are actions of the individual, and there are forces beyond the control of each of us as individuals. For example, if you were to come into a bunch of money tomorrow morning and decide that you are going to get some friends together, buy a racing sailboat, and join a competitive circuit, you'd have a lot to learn. Maybe you are already one of those people, but I don't think that lands with hardly any of us. And one of the things that you need to learn is that as important as the right gear and mastery of the sails and knots and ropes would be above the surface, so is the condition of the hull underneath the water. Because at the competitive levels of sailing, as much as a tiny piece of kelp that would get lodged onto the fuselage of this sailboat, creating a little extra drag, it could be the difference between winning and losing, between catching that current and wind just right or feeling the drag that is holding and hindering the forward momentum. And here's my point. Whether you are any of these things or you do any of these things, whoever you are this morning, there is something or someone or an object or a hurt or a pain point or a point of optimism, of hope. There is something determining your future. There is something fueling and motivating and shaping the kind of person you are becoming, which Dallas Willard said is basically your greatest gift that you could give God anyways. And in that journey, there are things, there are even people that propel you forward, and there are things that hinder you, that hold you back, that even knock you off course. See, there's something that is core, at the core of who you are, that acts as like an engine to the person you become. And it gives life or death and shape and tone and emotion to your entire experience of life. And it trickles out in all the areas of your everyday waking up and going to sleep. What is that? Could be many, many, many things. And without taking all the time to peel back every layer, there's a lot of people in the fields of theology, sociology, psychology, whatever have you, that say it basically boils down to two things that drive and propel who we become. On one end of the spectrum is fear, and on the other end of that spectrum is love. Am I a person fueled by fear, or am I a person fueled by love? And as I say that out loud, I still have PTSD around the word fear and that whole conversation from the pandemic a couple years ago. Did anyone else just tense up when someone said the word fear, or is that just me? Fear is a powerful shaper of who we become. And so in our house, we don't really have a cookie jar, but we do have to do that thing where you keep all the things that all they want to eat is up and out of reach. Y'all have that at your house? Let me not do that to you as a pastor this morning. Let me put the cookie jar right on the bottom and tell you the whole impetus behind today and the next couple of weeks of teaching coming from this pastoral ache offered to you. And it is this: don't let fear decide who you become. Let love. Don't let fear decide who you become. Let love. In my early years, you could have called me what I'm told the people call a scaredy cat. Yes, Rob, it's the first good of the new year. January 7th, 1113. Put that down in the records of the church. I love Rob so much. Fear has long been a dominating reality in my life. As a kid, I was so afraid of storms that I would go hide in the bathroom during school if I saw a dark cloud out the window. When I played middle school basketball, and really this is true in high school, but it's not as cool. You have more compassion on me in middle school. When I played middle school basketball, I used to fear missing a shot so badly that I rarely shot the ball, even ones that my coach was encouraging me to take. Speaking of another shot I got scared to take when it came to taking a shot at Eliza, when Eliza and I first started dating, I would get myself so worked up before we were going to hang out that I often end up puking somewhere and either canceling or showing up with eyes that definitely made it clear that something had just happened. I don't know about you, but fear is the thing. Fear is more than just feeling afraid, though. It's a driving force. It's like the kelp on the bottom of a fuselage that just holds things back, and it's hard to determine, and often we don't give enough credit for determining who we become. And whether you realize it or not today, my gut instinct is that fear is impacting more parts of your life than you might be wanting to give it credit for. It impacts everything you do, and it is certainly a huge part of this cultural moment. Hello, election year 2024. Who's looking forward to all that? Yeah. It affects the quality of our lives and of our faith. It affects the way we heal or don't heal, feel loved or not, give love or not. It shapes the dynamics of our marriages and our core relationships and the way we parent and the way we relate to others. It shapes the way we work and serve others or work for ourselves. It shapes the way we're generous or we're not generous. It shapes the way we trust God or anyone else, or we try to control God or every outcome. It even shapes the way we live in community, and it shapes what unites us in community. Hello, election year 2024. You were made not for fear, but for love. And perfect love casts out all fear. You were made to know it and to give it away. And so love is this thing, it's this force, it's this power that's at the center of the universe and your inside universe, and it's how you are meant to become who you are meant to become. And so my plea this morning, easier said than done, and we're going to unpack it in different ways for a couple of weeks. Just want to offer this thought to you, that as a follower of Jesus, please don't let fear decide who you become. You can't control every unknown, but you can control the power of fear as you navigate the unknown. Don't be fooled, you can't. Now, has it ever occurred to you that the emotion, the space between you and the life God imagines for you, the space between you and the life God made you for, the space between you and the life that you long for is actually filled not with obstacles that are external, but maybe a lot more fear that is internal? And part of what that means is that if you live your life always navigating away from fear, you'll never get to the life that God has for you. Right now, for example, let's talk about marriage for a second. Easy target, right? Let's say your marriage is struggling, and you're slowly growing more and more distant, and your desire to even want to work on it is waning, and it's less than it used to be. It could mean in this conversation that the gap between your marriage as it is and as it could be is not as simple as changing some tactics and learning to communicate, as powerful as those things are. Or quote unquote, loving better. Reading the book on love languages. And I'm for all that. Hear me, I'm for all that. I'm talking a little bit deeper. It's the kelp underneath the surface. Maybe the gap between your marriage as it is or an important relationship in your life and what it could be is going to be not through a change of tactics, but through an internal investigation of the core fears that are causing you not to want to walk that minefield towards love to begin with. Fears about who you are. Fears about being vulnerable and being real and authentic. Fear is about being honest with those things in your past and those things that are dominating, the things that on the surface just feel like we can't seem to communicate, when underneath is a core fear about being seen and fully loved. Whether it's your marriage or something else, if you're a follower of Jesus this morning and looking to Jesus and to the scriptures as our source, what we read from Joshua, as cliche and as many of you have heard that 1,000 times in your life, including the what's the most said thing in the Bible, the promise, command, don't fear. Like, yeah, we know that. I want you to hear one little slightly different angle today. I want you to know that in the language of what God says to Joshua, the idea to do not be afraid is not a suggestion. It's not tertiary. It's not secondary. It's not tangential. It is primary, and it is a command. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. That was really easy for me to say. Did that solve all your problems? All right, let's pack up and go out. It doesn't. But it's easy to say, right? Well, consider this. Why would God say it to Joshua? Because Joshua was what? He was afraid. A lot of times, there's probably a Joshua in the room that was named Joshua because that means strong and courageous. But let's think about it. Why would God tell Joshua to be strong and courageous? It wasn't because he was strong and courageous. He wasn't inherently strong and courageous. He was afraid. And he had to make a decision about the power of fear or the power of God's trust. And it was the actual difference for him and an entire nation of people at a moment of transition in life between being stuck in the unknown, the familiar, the present, the wilderness, and into the promised land. Joshua was not inherently strong and courageous. He had to be told to be strong and courageous. The problem is that while fear is a distressing, compounding, scary, problematic emotion, courage is not an emotion. It's just who you are. It's a buildup of choices. It's a reflection of your internal following and transformation. You ever met someone that's really courageous? You ever notice that oftentimes it's a facade for not doing anything courageous? Man. Sometimes the most courageous of us are the most fearful. Or we're the most loony bin. I mean that with love. That wasn't in my notes, so God strike that from the hearts of the people. Here's the really scary thing about all this. Check this when it comes to the emotional component of fear. When you live by fear, you feel fear. And when you live by courage, you feel fear. That was not what you're expecting. When you live by fear, you feel fear. When you live by courage, you feel. So which one would you rather live by? It's going to be there anyways. Courage doesn't eliminate the emotion of fear. You're going to feel about it regardless. And so if you're going to feel it, why not live the other? My brother Brian is a firefighter in Morgantown. And as a firefighter in Morgantown, he's seen some things. Some really interesting things. Things a first responder would see that are, your range from like the worst hoarding episode to Murder, She Wrote. Murder, She Wrote? I don't know. SVU, I don't know. Murder, She Wrote is what just came out of my mouth. Loosely based on the book by Louise May Alcott. I don't know. Let's just throw it back. He has seen a lot. And I don't want to make light of any of the intense things that he has seen as having to process, and it really affected many people's lives. But if you want to stir up fear in Brian's heart, you don't have to send him an image of a limb thrown upon the interstate. You just go to Google right now and Google the word clown. You send him an image. In fact, send scary clown picture to 304-55. That is his real number, and he has no heads up. Please, someone, take the chance to send him a clown image. Doesn't matter. It could be a kid's birthday party clown. He's scared. Circus clown. He's scared. The clown from any scary clown movie. He's scared. That is his real number. Honor his first responder life with a picture. All right, thank you, students. I know I can count on somebody. All the adults are like, ooh. So there are things that make us afraid. I can't wait from, let me just make that visible. There are things that make us afraid. But here's the psychology of that right now. Let's talk at that level for things. Think of something you're afraid of, like an object, a clown. If you weren't scared of clowns, go Google some scary clowns. You're welcome. Those things, those ideas, those people, we often think that it is the object that's the source of our fear. Again, I was scared of everything as a kid, but I wasn't scared of dark clouds because dark clouds are scary. I was scared of the dark clouds because something inside me, something about my identity, something about who I was, something in my internal universe of personhood and emotions and motives and feeling loved or unloved, or that really raw developmental process called just growing up, something about me was fearful. And so if you are going to change your future by getting courageous and stepping through your fear, you got to realize something really key. That often the objects and the people and the ideas and the groups and all the things that you are currently fearful of are more like a projection of your internal fears and insecurities rather than something to be fearful of. That's a better point than your reaction, but I'll forgive you. I think you're still busy processing clown pictures to my brother. Let me say it pretty bluntly. Oftentimes you are the source of your fear. You ever heard of a thing called confirmation bias? Confirmation bias and internal makeup of fear, those two things get aligned. And the thing about a person who doesn't fit with your confirmation bias, all of a sudden that validates your fear and your insecurity and gets projected at a person or an object or a clown or a dark cloud or an ideology or a far left or a far right or whatever it is. And all of a sudden we are making fear of people that God has called us to love the impetus of our life rather than rooting out the fear that's causing us to be fearful and otherize and tribalize and build walls and fences where God would say, build a well of life at the center, which is Jesus and community and the hope that is in you and transforming you, making you a person of love, not of fear. The future, if you're scared of the future right now, there is nothing in your future to be fearful of. There's nothing in your future to be fearful of. Your good shepherd is with you. And he is less concerned about fixing all your outcomes to make you less scared and more about what's happening in you as you walk that journey through the minefield of your fear and through those things that are disappointment and through that diagnosis and through that breakup and through that thing that you never thought would happen. God is far more interested. He loves you in your circumstance, don't get me wrong. But sometimes we bring an idea of I'll pray to God for the outcomes I desire because I'm scared of the other options rather than God, I'm scared. I don't know what it's going to bring, but don't let me miss the opportunity to be formed in that internal space by what I'm going through and make me more loving on the other side. If fear is defining the person you are, you got to quit focusing on situations. And you got to look at that internal complex and get at the root. First place fear shows up in Scripture is early. Pretty interesting because people aren't even on that first chapter in that first page. Didn't take too long for people to be here, and in Genesis 3, they're already fearful. They do the thing and they mess up everything for all of us, and the gospel plan continues to unfold. And God is walking into the garden, around the garden, and he asks them, he says, why are you hiding? The man answers, he said, I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked. I was afraid because of my shame. I was afraid, and what was the result? I hid. When fear is in that place, calling the shots in that core spaces of defining who you are and who you become, one of the shadow sides is that you spend a lot of your life hiding even in plain sight, hiding right in front of your kids, in front of your spouse, your coworkers, your best friends, hiding. Some of you are hiding in plain sight this morning. I can see you, but I don't see you. You're afraid to love because you've been burned. And you're shut down to risk and to vulnerability and intimacy because fear is expressing itself as inadequacy, and you wonder, can anyone ever love me completely? So you're hiding, and it's fear, not love, that's calling that shot. Some of you are hiding in plain sight, doing a job you hate because you don't have the courage to quit and find a job you love. Because fear is actually holding you back, and it's making you feel inadequate and undeserving to receive a career you long for. So you're hiding in plain sight, holding back on fully giving yourself, your trust, your desires, your life to Jesus because fear is screaming at you that you don't even deserve his love. And what is this going to change about me? And that is a thing. But again, why would God command Joshua to be courageous if his story wasn't going to have to walk straight into the grips of fear? In Matthew 10, Jesus talks about sparrows. And he says, "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside of your Father's care. And even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows." Jesus is saying that you have infinite value in the mind and the heart of God. So let me ask you a question this morning. What does a person such as yourself, a person of infinite value in the mind and heart of God, have to fear? What can life take from you that God cannot redeem? What can a person steal from you that God cannot give back? And I don't even know that's the right way to frame it. What can happen to you that God won't change you in that makes it all worth it anyways? Someone walks out on your marriage and you never find the next person. That's horrendous, and I don't wish that for you. But even if you don't get a new spouse, maybe it's worth it because of the transformation that happens in here. You get fired from a job undeservingly. And you can't ever land the dream job that you have wanted to make a difference in the world and to feel at home and at peace. Even if you don't ever land it, there's something of greater value in you and what happens in you and change that happens in you as you make this journey from living fearfully to becoming a person of love. God wants you to become more whole. And there's no path towards wholeness without going through some hurt, some change, some difficulty. Be strong and courageous. That's a command. Yes. Nice teaching, Matt. Really helpful. Just do it, right? Don't let fear determine your future. Nice. Thank you. I like that. Don't let fear seep into your soul. Great. Nice. Put it on a bumper sticker. It'll make the difference. But here's the real deal. You participate in this journey. So the power to conquer the power of fear, but that's the right thing. But the power to conquer fear doesn't come from your decision alone. Here's where it comes from. It's when you learn to live aware of how deeply loved you are by God. It's kind of that simple. Life is kind of that simple. If you can cultivate a life to become more aware of God's love towards you, it will so change you and shape every aspect of who you are and what you do with your life that all the other stuff will come together. And I hate to break it to you, but everything inside of you that God has placed in you is going to send you right into the ocean of fear. But you don't go it alone. And the more you live your life absolutely confident in God's love for you, the less you'll live your life controlled and paralyzed by fear. So as a husband, some days I'm more likable, and other days I'm less likable. Right? Insert example. Nah. Some days I'm more likable. Sometimes I wake up more joyful than others, and I have more patience. Other days I don't. I'm just turning into, I don't know what I'm turning into. I'm trying to help Jesus change me. Let him change me. Sometimes I'm more likable. You know what Elijah's great gift to me in our marriage is? Is that it's not that she likes me when I'm likable. It's that her love for me isn't dependent on how likable I am. It's her gift of unconditional love. It's that I get to live without any fear or doubt that she loves me. And what that does for me is that eliminates so much fear. And because I'm loved, I feel a sense of desire to change. And the same is true about God's love for you. And so here's a little Jesus juke as we pivot here at the end. The antidote, the remedy for fear is not courage, it's love. It's as you experience and receive God's love for you, you will transform into a person of courage. I am not standing before you to say, go be more courageous tomorrow, as if that act of willpower has the power to transform you from the inside out. Some of it's willpower. Most of it is a yielding to God. Show me who you are. Change me. Let me be loved and find myself lovable. Let me give love, and let me just put on courage today, even when I don't feel like it. Knowing that my performance of that, my likability in that journey is not dependent on your love for me at the end of the day when I put my head on my pillow and I'm like, yeah, I blew it today, or I made some progress today. It's love that transforms fear into courage. So what if the thing separating you from the life God created you for and from the person you are made to become has a lot less to do with situations out there and a lot more to do with internal, self-imposed lies and limits that has somehow made your core person grow up in a darkening, shrinking hall of horror room called fear versus the expansive universe of God's love that you could discover and explore and traverse and never find the border of. And what if there's a power, a strength, a source to rewrite that fear into something courageous? It's Jesus. Surprise ending, right? It's Jesus. Perfect love was laid down for you in the life, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus, so that not even death is something to fear. Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow can worry about itself. Seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you. Do not fear, do not be dismayed, for I am with you. Yea, though you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I am with you. Over and over and over of God. Again, God's promises to be with you is the antidote. It is the companion for the journey through the minefield that is fear towards love. When God's love for you begins to define who you are, it sets an entirely new trajectory for your life. And when you have a new trajectory for your life defined by God's love, your identity will speak louder within you than your fear. And when that happens, you will begin to live in the freedom and the fullness and the reality of all that God has for you. Fear is like the darkness that steals your light, but Jesus is the light of the world that extinguishes your darkness and sets you on the path to the life that you've always longed for. And so I'm going to invite you to stand in this moment. And we are going to have a moment that may be familiar to some and unfamiliar for others. And my encouragement is just to lean into this. We've done it several times through the years, and it's just a simple practice called imaginative prayer. And so what I'm going to invite you in is no one's going to come touch you. You're not going to have to come forward and raise a hand and all the things that you may not feel comfortable with. But all the invitation is this morning is to close your eyes if you're comfortable, to take our same posture, maybe even putting your hands out, and closing your eyes. And as you close your eyes, we're going to invite the Holy Spirit to help your mind's eye, your soul's eye, your heart's eye to focus beyond the scattered senses that are vying for your attention in this moment. And I want you to imagine yourself for a moment as standing and holding all the things and the people and the situations and the outcomes and the hurts that are based in fear. I want you to imagine yourself as physically carrying them on your shoulders, in a bag, however you would imagine it. I want you to take a moment just to try to feel feel the weight of it, to feel the impact of it. Some of it's new stuff you just picked up. Some stuff's been there for a lifetime. So you feel it, you see it. Then I want you to imagine Jesus, your good shepherd, walking up to you. And one by one, taking the things off your shoulders, off your bag, out of your hands, and putting it on his shoulders. When you notice his posture towards you is not shaming you for having picked up those things. It's a loving father that just wants to take the stuff off his kids. When you notice he's not even in a hurry. He might be even more interested in seeing what sparks and awakens as each thing, each compartment, each box, each issue comes up and out of you. Some of you may be really honing in on a thing or a few things that you are imagining Jesus doing that for you. Others, you're curious about what this practice is, and it's okay. You're welcome to explore this with us and tune it out for this week if you need to. But the invitation is the same to each one of us this morning. To let Jesus shoulder your fear. Let his love cast out your fear. For he has big shoulders, and he bids you to come to him and hand over your stuff, not just one time, but daily, and to embrace the day in, day out, lifelong journey of becoming a person of love and not fear. And as I said earlier this morning, Jesus has paid the ultimate price to give us that option. And he's worthy of it. And you can explore God's love your entire life, and you'll never come to its borders. So Jesus, thank you for loving us. Thank you for shouldering our burdens. Thank you for removing the power of fear and shame. Thank you that you are in on our journey with your own life, your death, your resurrection. Thank you that your Spirit is our companion in the journey that we call life and apprenticeship with you. Jesus, for each person in this room today that came in carrying things, may there be something, whether it's gone or off or lighter or just named, that they will find comfort in the space that they're in, knowing that you are with them. For those that are curious or skeptical or angry at God this morning, and that's their way of hiding and pretending, God, just meet them there. Know that this is a place to belong before you have it all together. And even someone's anger is welcome. Jesus, we love you. Change us. And as we sing in these next minutes, may what's happening in the hearts and the minds of the people in this room be sealed. May it be a direction, trajectory, marriage changing, healing, parenting, work, life, friendship level thing that defines who we are and the sort of church we are to become for the sake of our community. So Jesus, here we are. We offer our lives as this act. Come and meet us more.